CFB Paint back for another episode. Solo today, rolling solo. Got just me today. We excuse Corey this go around, new baby and whatnot. So it'll just be me covering the week that was and trying to spin forward to this next week. Really fun week of college football. The weeknight games were all pretty good. I guess maybe Army, East Carolina, maybe that's not your flavor. And 28-6, not a crazy competitive game either. Friday night games loaded. Florida State, Virginia Kansas kicked off. My Noles did not deserve to win that game. I think they were a little bit fortunate to get it to overtime. Too many wasted opportunities. Defense played pretty soft. Virginia's a pretty good team. I think Chandler Morris has found his spot, which is good. I think he was at, if memory serves, he was at North Texas last year. He had a pretty good year for them. And I was a little surprised to see him bump back up to sort of Power 4 football, just because he hardly played at Oklahoma, had fits and starts at TCU for a few years, really had a great season at North Texas, and I thought, all right, he's found his level and goes to UVA, and so far so good for them. So the Cavaliers get it done. I just a couple of quick notes on that. Got to see more of a defensive physicality. The physicality that Florida State had shown in the Alabama game was completely absent against Virginia. So that's a real problem if you're going to face Miami next week. I think that Miami team was off this past week, had a chance to probably watch that game, and just I'm sure that offensive line was licking their chops to get at a Florida State line that played so passively. So hopefully that changes for the Florida State Seminoles. But an entertaining game. I think everyone around the country was pretty excited to see that one go to double overtime, and that one very quickly was followed up with the Arizona State TCU game, back and forth affair as well. Man, I think there's a couple things that I would take away from that game. TCU had opportunities to really put the nail in the coffin. They had the ball, I believe, twice up 3, could not extend that lead in the fourth quarter. Arizona State comes up big. Sam Leavitt has, you call it whatever you want, the clutch gene. They know how to turn it on. I do think if you are Arizona State, if you're a Sun Devil fan, and I know that we have a handful that listen to us, you're probably frustrated that you haven't been able to develop more of a receiving core around Jordan Tyson. I know that they made attempts to get to bring in some transfers and to try and buoy up that wide receiver room. It is still a little bit troubling how much of your receiving game goes through Jordan Tyson. Again, just as a quick reminder, he has 483 yards, 39 receptions. The next closest to him on the team is Mateer, the tight end, with 160 yards. So almost like a little more than 3 times fewer passing yards, or 3 times more less receiving yards. And half as many receptions, so 17-19. So he really is kind of out there by himself. And then the next highest pass receiver is the running back, Raleek Brown, out of the backfield. So it's a little bit troubling that hasn't translated into more opportunities for other guys and them taking advantage of that. Now, I don't know if that, is going to be necessarily the biggest problem, because he is a pretty dominant receiver, but you'd like to think that other players outside would be taking advantage of the lack of attention that they're receiving, given the focus that defenses are going to have to put on Jordan Tyson, because he is a really special player. But nonetheless, Arizona State, resilient, finds a way to win. That is, I think, I can't remember what their record is in one-score games over the last 2 years. It's something like 7-1, something in that ballpark. That's really good for them. I do think you're going to have to, at some point here, start putting opponents away that can't play with fire that long, especially with the 2 opponents you have coming up, Utah and Texas Tech. I don't think you're going to want to be down and have to come back in either of those games. This is starting to become a pattern for Arizona State, where they fell behind at Mississippi State, caught up but couldn't quite close the deal. Baylor, same thing, had played from behind and had to win that one late. Same is true for this TCU game at Utah. That spells trouble to me. That one could be a real problem if you're not within a single possession. Don't be chasing late on that. And then you host Texas Tech, so you have the meat of your Big 12 schedules up now, and thankfully you do have a bye week here to try and get some of that squared away to shore up anything that maybe can change. And the big thing that I'd be looking at offensively is, can we get someone else on the outside to be a second threat in the receiving game, in the pass game? So that'd be something I'd be looking for if I'm an Arizona State Sun Devil fan. Even the late game on Friday night, Houston and Oregon State, was a fun one. Oregon State, my heart bleeds for the Beavers. Again, they've had such a rough go of things, and it looked like they were going to get this win. And then at the very end of that game, a couple of fast touchdowns by Houston. They went up tempo, and it just totally changed the game. The field goal kicking at Arizona State is problematic. It's a bummer they couldn't kick that field goal to win right at the end of regulation. So felt bad for him from that perspective. But chin up, Beavers. It'll get better, but it might get worse before it gets better. All right, Saturday, huge slate of games. I got my eyes on a handful of them, so I'll probably talk about them more extensively. The Oregon-Penn State game, I just thought was just a kind of a big slugfest. And if I'm a Penn State fan, I am furious at the lack of holding. Deny Dennis Sutton, I felt was hold. You could probably call a hold on every single play, but there were some really egregious ones that somehow were not called, and in some cases directly led to points. So I'd be frustrated with that. The no fumble call, I am stunned that they considered that an overturn. Again, I need to read the rule book a little bit better, but I didn't see that he clearly touched the grass, and I am curious if is it the grass or is it the actual earth, like the soil, so that part I would want to just get clarity on. But yeah, I didn't, in my opinion, I don't think I saw enough to overturn that, but that might also be like just the definition on my television. So let me know if you feel otherwise. But an impressive road win for the Oregon Ducks. Dante Moore, looked sharp, looked polished. And again, the defensive slugfest for about 3/4 of the game. Hat tip to Penn State for fighting back and not going in the tank, going down 17-3. It'd be really easy to just pack it in at that point and say it's not our night. They were able to force overtime. Couldn't get it done in overtime. Awesome environment, awesome atmosphere. I'm not writing off either one of those two teams. If I'm a Penn State fan, I would understand the frustration because Penn State just never seems to get it done in these big games. I don't know if I have a perfect solve for Penn State fans. I think that's just sort of the James Franklin experience, but there's a lot of people that would be very, very happy with that experience as well. So again, I wonder. We'll see what comes of the season, but it is one of those things where I wonder if people are willing to roll the dice to say, hey, we know that it could potentially get worse, but could it also potentially get better? Because I think I'm the one that subscribes to that. In fact, I saw some conversations on social media detailing people's different opinions about James Franklin, and someone said, you could do a lot worse than him at Penn State, and they cited a couple of coaches and areas before James Franklin arrived that maybe were suboptimal, and I would say there was a lot of off-the-field things that were leading up to some of that. And then also just sort of the tail end of Paterno's career, even, the whole Sandusky situation set to the side, which obviously is a big thing, but it wasn't great toward the end of his tenure anyway. And so that's a valid point that I think it could get a lot worse, but I also think that you could maybe unlock that next level. I mean, Penn State really doesn't take a back seat to maybe 4 or 5 programs: Ohio State, Texas, Bama, Georgia, Southern Cal, maybe a handful of other SEC teams like LSU. I don't know if I'd even put Florida in that mix, but we'll get to Florida in a minute. They really should be in this upper echelon. I don't think their fans are unrealistic to say, hey, every 5 years we should legitimately compete for a national championship. And every 10 years is probably not a crazy expectation given the new landscape and all the resources that Penn State has versus many other schools, that they should try, be really close at contending for one, if not winning one. Once every 10 years, I don't think is unrealistic. So feel for them then. Oregon, going all out. Yeah, they're looking pretty good. I think with a different set of officials, this game probably goes the other way. So I maybe am not completely sold on their offensive line, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see. I mean, again, Penn State's an excellent defensive line, so it's very few people that might be able to take advantage of that are on Oregon's schedule. I think there isn't a single one left. But come playoff time, I wonder if that ends up being a problem if you get a similar effort from an opposing defensive line along with officials that are more eager to truly enforce the rules of the game and how the game's supposed to be played. So tough one for Nittany Lions fans there, and congratulations to Oregon. LSU and Ole Miss, I really didn't get too many eyes on this game, so I don't really have too much other than it's great entertainment from a social media perspective, seeing Lane Kiffin win and pull out receipts. So go through those at your leisure. I don't think Ole Miss is the fourth best team in the country, but I don't know if there's anyone really left on their schedule who can challenge that. Let me take a quick peek at it again. But if memory serves, okay, you're hosting Washington State in 2 weeks. So they have a bye plus Washington State. That I think should be a pretty easy game, although Washington State gave Washington some trouble. I think I like their the new quarterback that they recently used. They used in the Apple Cup. It was an intriguing fit for what they do offensively. But yeah, going on the road in Oxford, that one's going to be a win for the Ole Miss Rebels. At Georgia, at Oklahoma, back-to-back weeks. That spells trouble. So we'll see how they come out of on that side of things. But beyond that, you have South Carolina, who I expect them to win. You host them. You host the Citadel, again, a win. Host Florida, probably a win. At Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. Could be interesting. Mississippi State's game. Part of the reason I didn't see much of this Ole Miss game is because I was watching a lot of that Mississippi State-Tennessee game. Very entertaining, very back and forth. I feel like Jeff Lebby has done a great job at Mississippi State in a very short amount of time. And I think the needle's pointing up for them. I think they're only going to get better. That roster is maybe still not where it needs to be, but significantly upgraded. Blake Shapen, I feel like looks like a totally different quarterback this year than last year, and miles different from where he was at Baylor. So hat tip to the development job they've done there. They have a couple of really good playmakers. Fluff Bothwell, I don't even know his true first name, but his nickname is Fluff. Played his freshman year last year at South Alabama and was, I think, a 1,400-yard rusher at South Alabama. Joins Mississippi State this year. He's a really entertaining physical back. They know how to kind of spread it out and draw up some shot plays. So they're a fun offense to watch. Excited for that one at the end of the year too. Plus Jeff Lebby did coach underneath Lane Kiffin, so adds a little bit of intrigue to the rivalry there. So a couple of other games I wanted to touch on. Arizona State, Iowa State, just real quick. That one, I wasn't sure exactly what to make of Arizona's 3-0 start. I know that they're certainly a more unified team. I do think they're a bowl team. I don't know if there are much beyond that still. There's going up against one of the teams that is expected to contend for the Big 12 Conference Championship and going on the road. That's challenging. I didn't see a whole lot of evidence that says that they can really play with those teams. So if nothing else, it's just good to see Arizona kind of back to competency, but they still have ways to go when it comes to contending. Iowa State looks like they're poised to be in the Big 12 race until the very end. How did I not even touch on this yet? Georgia Tech and Wake Forest. Georgia Tech really had to pull it out of the fire at the end there. Great effort by Wake Forest. I think that was kind of a game that they had circled as an opportunity for them to win. Georgia Tech finds a way to pull it out. Hanks King is a winner. He wins in the clutch. This one, the Miami game from a couple years ago. A few others come to mind, but yeah, good for them. Let's see. Oh, USC Illinois. That was an interesting one, just with the amount of players that Illinois got back. Just a night and day difference between this week and last week. Jaden Mayava played an okay game. A couple of costly decisions in that one that ended up really kind of giving their chances away. He did threw an interception, and I think we've talked about how I am on him as a QB. Like I'm okay on him. I'm maybe warming up a little bit to him, but I think you'd like to see them play a little bit better. Given some of the opportunities that were there downfield. Again, he threw it for 364, costly interception toward the end, and they also did lose a fumble. That one's interesting. I think the Big 12, or excuse me, the Big 10, that second tier is still sort of setting itself out. I think you have Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon as that upper echelon, right? Just beneath that, who's there? I've got USC sort of in there, Illinois, Indiana, of course, maybe Washington. Again, that Ohio State game maybe wasn't necessarily as close as the score indicated. Michigan is perhaps sprinkled in there too. I think it's still to be determined. I may be missing one or two others, but really interested to see how that all shakes out. And a great bounce back game for Illinois after getting kind of embarrassed in front of the whole country last week, to turn right around, go back to your home stadium and hold off the Trojans, who had looked like a real force. And even then, they did. It was not a whole lot of defense being played in this game. 490 yards to 502, so lots of yards for everyone going around. But yeah, I just good on the Illini to get up off the mat after a disappointing performance the week prior against Illinois, or against Indiana rather. I think I may have said that backwards, but you know what I meant. Let's keep going. Maybe we go to the other big one of the night, Georgia and Alabama. Really entertaining game. I did not realize that Ryan Williams had so many drops. I knew that he had dropped a couple in the FSU game where it's like, oh, we were bailed out there. I also think some of the drops attributed to him are maybe not super fair, but he had a pretty critical drop in this game early on as they'd schemed up what was a no-doubt touchdown. They end up coming up empty on the drive. He just drops the ball. Rough. I was okay with Georgia's decision to go for it on 4th and 2 from the 15, 17, instead of kicking the field goal to tie the game at 24 early in the fourth quarter, I should say. There's enough time left that I think I probably am willing to go for it there. I don't know. It's one of those ones that always is second guessed kind of after the fact. So, and it's almost always based on the outcome of the game and the outcome of the decision being made. If the decision goes the way that you want it to, like if you convert and you win, then you're hailed for it. If you convert and you, or if you don't and you lose, then everyone's going to point to that as the key decision or the key kind of where the game hinged. And I don't know if I really see that either way. Great game, slugfest. I did kind of chuckle at how sort of sour Kirby Smart is when people bring up his record versus Alabama, because he's like, what about everyone else's record? And he's not wrong. That's a fair point, but that's a deflection, right? Like that's not owning yours. And so I don't know. It's just been a while since Georgia, has won a national championship. And by been a while, I mean been a while by their standards that they had sent when they won 2 in a row. And then now to be out of the playoff 2 years ago and then one and done in the playoff this most recent year. And now the margin for error starts to shrink just a little bit if you're Georgia. Again, maybe not, they're not out of it by any stretch, but they have Ole Miss coming to town, which again will be a challenge. And then they do host Texas as well. And they also have Georgia Tech, kind of a neutral, if not maybe technically. It's a Georgia Tech home game, but I think it's at it's at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So it's not actually it's not at Bobby Dodd Stadium. It's not on Georgia Tech's campus. So if anything, I bet you that crowd is probably 70-30 in favor of Georgia, maybe even more heavily. So if I'm a Georgia Tech fan, I'm kind of mad that they relocated that, but Georgia's got work to do, and they'll have some challenges ahead, but not selling the dogs yet. I do think that Ty Simpson looked pretty good and continues to get better and better. And that's no surprise to me in that, well, let me put it this way. He didn't look good against Florida State, and that to me was kind of, I think at the time I said, he hasn't started so far, and there's probably a reason for that, and that appeared to be true. What I meant by it's not surprising is that I have always seen Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb get the best out of their players. So for them to find a way to get him kind of recalibrated, reoriented after that disappointing performance in the season opener and finding things that are working for him, that part is maybe less surprising. So Alabama came out, scored a bunch of points early, had to sort of hold on late. They had to, no points in the second half. That might be a little problematic. I know they did have a missed field goal, but something to keep in mind that I think that's been both times that Kalen DeBoer's Alabama has faced Georgia has jumped out to an early lead and then largely been bottled up in the second half with the one 65-yard or 70-yard pass, Ryan Williams touchdown in the fourth quarter last year to kind of reclaim the lead and win that game in the regular season. So something to keep in mind. It feels like he's got lightning in a bottle when he's got time to plan it and scheme it and show the Georgia Bulldogs defense something different. Once the Bulldogs are able to regroup at halftime, they usually lock them up. So just something that'd be interesting to like watch going forward if you're like if you're a gambling person. I wonder if you could find some sort of like second half under that you could play on Alabama whenever they play at Georgia if these two coaching staffs stay in place. I digress. Let's see, what are the other games that our typical listeners will want us to touch on? I don't know if there's any others that we really want to spend too much time on. I guess we'll go to the BYU game. BYU started pretty slow offensively and defensively against Colorado. Colorado jumps out to a 14-0 lead. Caden Salter looked better than he had his entire time at Colorado, those first two drives. After that, I think the defense sort of was more prepared for some of the misdirection they were doing in the run game with sort of the read options that they were running. I don't know why they weren't prepared for it. Again, the physicality on the defensive line to me was lacking, and you can't start slow like that as with some of these new tests that are coming your way. So would like to see them be ready to go right from that opening whistle. Bear Bachmeier had a great game. Like he's a good quarterback as they were down, 14-3 for a bit there. And I was leaning over to my wife and I said, he's not the reason they're losing. He's playing fine. They were just sort of struggling to move the ball. The defense, again, gave up two pretty, they were methodical drives, but it also didn't look like they had made Colorado earn it. They're averaging probably 6 or 7 yards of play in those first couple of drives. And after that, it largely swung in favor of BYU. So good for them. But yeah, Bear Bachmeier, 19 of 27 for 179 yards, 2 touchdowns, and I think he had 98 on the ground. Let me just double check that. But yeah, contributed both ways. I think he was the Big 12 Offensive Freshman of the Week. Hard to argue with that. He's played just great. I think you need some players around him to step up and continue to play well. And drops continue to be something that's a little bit of a surprising development for the wide receivers and skill positions. So would like to see that shoring up. You cannot start slow against Utah in a couple of weeks. So, but ahead of that, you've got a West Virginia game and Arizona on the road, which ask any Pac-12 team, they know if you go to the desert, you go to Tucson or Tempe and you play a late night game against Arizona or Arizona State, things can get weird. So there's lots to go before I really am buying into BYU being a true Big 12 contender. But win those two games leading up to the Utah game and play a good game, a clean game against Utah, and maybe I'll start to believe some. I don't know if I had anything else from the week that was, so maybe I'll spin it forward to this next week. And the big one, which again, it's really disappointing that you weren't able to win this past week if you're Florida State and have that be a top 10, perhaps even a top 5 matchup between you and Miami. The Hurricanes come to Tallahassee. I think they're currently sitting at like a 4.5, 5 point favorite. I strongly disagree with that. I think that they could be, I would have it at 7.5, I think. So maybe a little bit of a spoiler alert. My pick is Miami and Miami to cover. I need to see way more physicality from FSU's defensive line before I believe it. I think, 4.5 is really low. Who knows? Maybe Florida State wins. Like, I would love it if that happens. I don't see it happening. I really don't, as much as I'd like to. That Miami defensive line has been very, very good. So I think that they'll be able to get pressure on Castellanos without giving up a lot of rush lanes. And that's always usually the trade-off for facing such a dynamic mobile quarterback, is that do you pressure that quarterback and potentially give up some? Can he gash you on the ground if he slips through a gap in your pass rush? I don't see a whole lot of that from Miami. I think that they're, granted, I don't know how many crazy mobile quarterbacks they've seen here, and they said, they did see DJ Lagway, but I think he's injured. I think that's pretty apparent. He's currently in a walking boot. I don't know. I'm just, that one to me screams Miami wins, and wins probably by, I don't know. I think I've got them winning by at least 10. So I think a more appropriate line would be 7.5. You watch, I'll end up being wrong on that. Florida State will play a close game, but they won't win. I really don't see a great path to victory for Florida State. Who knows? I could be wrong. But yeah, really disappointing that you're not going into that game as an undefeated, with a chance to really kind of, if you're undefeated and you beat Miami, your odds of going to the playoff are pretty high at that point. I think just because the rest of your schedule looks pretty manageable at this point. I mean, on the road at Clemson, I'm never counting that as a win, but Clemson's kind of been, they're going through whatever they're going through. A couple of other games that I'm intrigued to watch play out. Mississippi State at Texas A&M, fascinating game. Mississippi State takes it on the road, I think, for the first time this year. Am I right? I'll have to double check that. But just a second. Let me check that real quick. Mississippi State. Now let's take a peek at their schedule. Oh, they were on the road at Southern Miss the first game of the year. Excuse me. So have been in, but it's first real road environment, and that's a no joke road environment at Kyle Field. So fascinating. A&M again. I still am not entirely sure what to make of them. A great game against Notre Dame a few weeks back. The rest of their schedule really, I mean, Utah State's not a great team. Auburn, I don't necessarily buy Auburn. They were 0 of 15 on 3rd and 4th down. So credit belongs to the Texas A&M defense on that. I do think you'll need probably more than 16 points to beat Mississippi State, but I'm not positive of that. I do think they'll probably scheme up at least a few. So that one's really interesting. Again, a really good defensive mind against a really good offensive mind. And then the flip side of the coin is, okay, when Texas A&M is on offense and when Mississippi State's on defense, Texas A&M thus far, I think, has been a pretty good offensive team, and maybe not where they want to be defensively, but I wonder if Mike Elko can get that turned around this week. I don't know. Like I'm not exactly sure what to make of that game, but I am excited to see it. That one's kind of in that sort of later time slot as well. A couple of other ones that I will. Yeah, I mean, again, I'll be tuning in for the Duke Cal game on the West Coast. Excellent. Love the Atlantic Coast Conference is playing games at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Awesome. And Duke's playing much better, but that's a long road trip. So current spread is Duke -3.5. I do think Duke probably covers that, but could be a pretty wild environment. Cal's 4-1. I think they'll make a bowl. I'm pretty excited for them. They're a fun team to watch. Another one that to me is maybe worth paying attention to is where'd it go? Yeah, Washington and Maryland. Again, Washington, two pretty dynamic young QBs, so that part will be exciting. Washington making the cross-country trip. Got to see what happens there. And then, sorry, I did skip over this one before. Vanderbilt, Alabama. I know what happened last year. I would love to see it happen again. I don't see it happening. I think Alabama is, I think the best thing for them, possibly after such an awesome victory and riding high after beating Georgia, is to face a team that kind of embarrassed you and that you had to hear about for 9 months after losing to Vanderbilt and hosting them undefeated. Game day will be there. They're going to have their attention, right? I think you're going to get Alabama on its P's and Q's. Diego Pavia is an awesome, entertaining quarterback, super fun, super confident. So no doubt Vanderbilt will come to play. I just don't see them winning. If they can shorten the game, that will be interesting. I think that's the goal is try and keep it maybe 2 to 3 possessions per half for each team. If you're Vanderbilt, and have your possessions last 7 or 8 minutes and finish in the end zone. I'm struggling to see exactly how that will work. Although with the QB run game, I like some of the pieces they have on the outside. Cedric Alexander as a running back, the tight end Eli Stowers. They've got some playmakers on the team. Is kind of the long and short of it. So if they can keep Alabama in front of them, don't give up some of the big explosive plays, who knows? Maybe they have a shot. I do think this one plays out differently. I've got Bama, and I've got Bama covering the 10.5. So that's another one of my picks for this week. I guess we do technically should cover Texas goes on the road at Florida. I mean, this is going to be, I think, a low-scoring game. It looks like the total currently is at 42.5. I would take the under on that. I think that game. Hold on. Let me find it over here. Yeah, 42.5. Texas is favored by 6.5 on the road. It's in the swamp. It's in Gainesville. Give me the under 42.5 is another one of my picks to this week. And I think Texas covers, but I do think that game could be 16-10. It really could be played in the teens. Texas is a really good defense. Florida has a pretty good defense, and it's been game. A bye week, I think, did them some real good. Opportunity to kind of get ready for this game. And, they're fighting for their lives at this point. And Billy Napier is coaching for his job. So backs against the wall. What kind of effort do we see out of the Florida Gators? It's probably one that you don't expect to have, but if you can get it, your odds of making a bowl look a lot better. If you lose that one, then you have to go on the road at Texas A&M. That doesn't look great. You still have Georgia at Ole Miss, hosting Tennessee, and hosting Florida State, along with hosting Mississippi State. Sorry, that's not in order, but I mean, Florida's got a tough road ahead of them. That's a pretty gnarly schedule, and especially for the way that they started, where losing to South Florida kind of set you on a bad foot. LSU game got out of hand with the interceptions. Miami game wasn't very competitive. It could snowball on Florida. So I'm going to take the under in that game, and then we'll see what happens there. Let's see, what else do we have? Anything else I really need to tackle in this? Oh, Clemson, North Carolina. I don't know who. I'm taking Clemson to cover. That's a choice of mine. But who knows what Clemson is at this point? Like, again, they had a bye week to sort of try and get their heads on straight. We'll see if they did. I don't know if I believe it, but who knows? Yeah, I don't know if I've got anything else that I really want to cover in the kind of looking forward. It does look like, oh yeah, I should mention, yeah, BYU hosts West Virginia. Corey and I will be at that game, so we'll be able to give you kind of our own perspective from the stadium on that one. Yeah, I think BYU will win. I don't think, yeah, I don't think that they'll necessarily cover it. Like 19.5 is a lot for them to cover in a Power 5 game. So I'm a little surprised that that spread's that high. So I don't know if I see that, but that's a long way to travel for West Virginia. They just suffered a disappointing start to Big 12 play in the last couple of weeks. But yeah, opportunity for them to try and turn it around. Rich Rod is always a fun and dynamic coach, but it's going to take him a couple of years. So I got BYU winning. I don't think I necessarily feel super strongly about them covering that spread. It seems like a lot. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm ready to go on that. Beyond that, I'm scrolling through just the calendar of the week. Boise State, Notre Dame. Again, I really thought that the drop-off for Boise State wouldn't be as dramatic as I think it has been. I'm interested. Like, keep that game interesting, Boise, and then we might see, like, okay, what happens in the Mountain West. I do think with their loss to USF, odds are that the G5 representative for the playoff is coming out of the American, whether it's USF, Navy, Memphis, perhaps Tulane. Again, it depends on what happens in the season. I think Tulane's, yeah, I mean, whoever wins the conference is probably it, but it's probably within that group. So we'll have to see, but that's a good collection. I do think it comes out of there. But Boise, if you beat Notre Dame and a couple of those teams in the American take a few losses, you're going to need that help to get back into that conversation, and you're probably going to need UNLV to look pretty good when you face them in a few weeks, or just continue looking good until you face them, I should say. I don't know if I had anything else specific from this past week or from this week going ahead. Yeah, nothing else is really jumping out at me. Yeah, all right. I might just leave it at that. I don't think there's anything else to really tackle here. If there's some sort of really gross oversight, please let me know, and we will try and tackle it in a subsequent episode. But yes, thank you very much for hearing us out here and living with me, just solo stream of consciousness. Hopefully I kept the ums and ers and so's to a minimum, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks so much.